Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No potato questions. Ambassador Tai, welcome back to Congress. As you know, the United Kingdom is one of our nation's largest trading partners and closest allies. The UK is America's fifth largest export market and our largest services trading partner in the world. The U.S. and UK are also each other's largest foreign investors. And while our two countries have a substantial foundation in trade and investment, it's clear there is room to strengthen those ties and deepen the special relationship, in particular with a comprehensive free trade agreement. A new U.S.-UK trade agreement would build upon the common values and interests of our two countries, and in doing so, help reduce costs for American consumers, improve supply chain resilience with a trusted partner, and open new markets for U.S. producers, including products in my home state of South Dakota. Important groundwork's already been laid, including the bilateral negotiations initiated by President Trump toward a trade agreement and the U.S.-UK dialogue on the future of Atlantic trade initiated by President Biden to improve economic cooperation. There's also bipartisan support for this effort, as Senator Coons and I recently introduced a bill to kickstart trade negotiations with the UK. And with the recently announced Windsor Framework, which provides a pathway on post-Brexit trading arrangements in Northern Ireland, and in which President Biden supports, the timing couldn't be better to re-engage with the UK on a trade agreement. But as with any trade agreement, I should say, it will require presidential leadership and a committed USTR to move the ball forward. So my question, Ambassador, is will you commit to strengthen the U.S.-UK trade relationship, in particular by undertaking steps to negotiate a comprehensive trade agreement with the UK?
Senator Thune, on the first part of your question, I absolutely commit to working to strengthen this relationship and have been doing so for the last 2 years. On the second part of your question, with respect to a free trade agreement negotiation, let me just say I remain open-minded. I'll reinforce what I've said earlier, which is we look at each one of our trade relationships and we look at the overall situation in the global economy, what our economy needs to make sure that what we do is tailored. You've mentioned a lot of developments in the UK. We are tracking all of them, and I had a conversation with my new counterpart, the Trade Secretary Badenoch, just last week. So I'm happy to continue to stay in touch with you as we build that relationship and continue those conversations.
Good. So you are in conversations with them.
We are in conversation.
Appreciate that commitment. I strongly encourage USTR and the President to make a trade deal with the UK, one of our closest allies, a top priority. It's something that can and really just needs to be done. USTR continues to push the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. You've heard some of my colleagues talk about that, which is presumably about reinforcing America's presence in the region and offering an alternative to China's influence. The problem is that IPEF doesn't achieve much of either. And while there may be areas of potential, what remains glaringly absent, in my view, are tangible benefits related to market access. And if the U.S. doesn't meaningfully engage in the Indo-Pacific, I'm concerned that South Dakota farmers and ranchers and all American businesses simply won't be able to compete on a level playing field. Without market access, enforceable commitments, and a binding approval from Congress, IPEF partners may also start to question America's commitment to trade and look elsewhere. Meanwhile, China is aggressively pressing forward a trade agenda, whether it's in the Asia-Pacific, Africa, Latin America, or just earlier this week reaffirming economic ties with Russia, which again entails a lot broader significance. So given the economic and geopolitical interests at stake, I again strongly urge USTR to be more ambitious and bolster America's presence in the region. And I would ask, what is the administration doing to counter China's economic assertiveness and its apparent increasing alignment with Russia, and when will we see tangible progress?
Well, in terms of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, and I'm conscious of the time that I have left, let me just make a couple points. One is that we're making quite a bit of progress there. Since launching this last May, we've had a ministerial in-person in September, and we just concluded our second negotiating round in Indonesia, with the third one announced in Singapore in 2 months. To your point about, and let me just reinforce that our partners are extremely excited to have us back in the region, and they are very, very deeply engaged. On your market access point, let me just make this comment, which is the traditional approach to free trade agreements being comprehensively tariff liberalizing has led to winners and to losers. While it has been, I believe, in general, very good for our agricultural producers, the other swaths of our economy very much feel like the playing field is not level. When we look at the brittleness and the vulnerabilities, especially with respect to concentrations of supply in our supply chains, we are keenly aware of the need for us to bring a more resilient approach to our trade engagements. And that is exactly what we're doing in this particular region. So I'm happy to continue this conversation with you, but want to let you know that we are not driven by an ideology about this. We are deeply practical about how we engage with our partners, how we make each other more resilient. That is a guiding principle for the IPEF, and it will continue.
And it's got to be about results. And ultimately, to me at least, and when you look at the number of free trade agreements China has, and particularly in the region, and how we're absent, we've got to get free trade agreements. And the best way to do that is get Trade Promotion Authority, which we've had this conversation before. I wish the administration would do something about. Thank you.